Welcome to the second installment of Mille Lacs Band TV. I'm Jamie Edwards, and I'm here today with Tad Johnson. Tad is the Senior Director of American Indian Nations Relations at the University of Minnesota System. Tad is also an advisor on government affairs to the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. Tad, welcome again. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Jamie. Nice to be here.
So, like we did last time, we are going to try to answer some questions, Tad. So I am going to read a few questions, and if you could help us out and do your best to answer these questions. Again, Tad has years of experience in American Indian law, Indian affairs, teaching that at university level, a very accomplished man in his own right. Tad, there are more than 570 tribes with reservations across the country that coexist peacefully and civilly with local governments and state governments, and most have fractional land ownership with large percentages of non-Indians living within those reservations. Why does Mille Lacs County think that the existence of this reservation poses threats that don't exist in any other part of the country?
Well, Jamie, I don't think anyone can answer that except Mille Lacs County. I do know that there are, for example, the Puyallup tribe up in Washington State is right in the city of Tacoma, and the city of Palm Springs was built on the reservation of the Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla Indians. They were once my clients, so I watched the city council meeting and a tribal council meeting essentially going on at the same time. They were all meeting together. So there's more. I was told by a Fond du Lac official there are more non-Indians living within their boundaries than there are Native Americans. They've actually got part of the town of Cloquet in their boundaries, and Leech Lake has probably over 1,000 people that are non-Indian living in and having cabins within their boundaries. And it's, I think if Mille Lacs had a simple conversation with some of these other sovereigns, other counties, other cities where there are a lot of Native Americans, they would find it's not the problem they're contemplating. And there are many opportunities when it comes to partnering with Indian tribes, whether it's building roads. And with the town of Garrison, Crow Wing County, we built a wastewater treatment facility. They had a need. We went and found funding from the Army Corps of Engineers and kicked in some of our own funding. So there's a lot of advantages to being friendly with the tribe as opposed to trying to disestablish them.
All right, Tad, another question for you. Why does the Mille Lacs Band refer to itself as the non-removable Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe?
So in the policy of the United States in the late 1800s was to create allotments on reservations. The General Allotment Act passed in 1887, and the way that was applied in Minnesota was called the Nelson Act. And a commission came over and asked the Mille Lacs Band if they would be willing to take allotments at White Earth, and they said, we'd rather take allotments here. Some of them did go to White Earth, but those that stayed were known as the non-removal Mille Lacs. And when the statutes were being written in the latter part of the 20th century, they changed the word to non-removable, which indicates that in spite of the numerous times the United States government, later the state of Minnesota, tried to remove them from their lands, they will not be removed. And then the United States came down with its opinion in the early 90s that they still had the right to the reservation. The boundaries were still intact. Later, the Obama administration wrote much longer opinion, and then the state of Minnesota came in agreeing with the fact that the reservation always existed. So Those who stayed at the lake were considered non-removal. Later, that morphed into the word non-removable, but I think it's quite an apropos word.
All right, thank you, Tad. In its recent press release, Mille Lacs County characterized the ruling, the most recent ruling we talked about on our first video, as a significant change for the many residents and businesses in the area that have for over a century been living with the shared understanding that their land was not on an Indian reservation. Is this a fair characterization? Does this ruling represent a significant change for non-Indians on the reservation?
No, it doesn't.
Anything else on that question? Should we keep going?
No, there's a lot of fear out there that in 1978, there was a case called Oliphant that said Indian tribes do not have criminal jurisdiction over non-Indians. In 1989, there was a case in Washington State on the Yakima Reservation called Brendale, which indicated that and held that the tribes cannot zone non-Indians within the reservation. And also Atkinson Trading Post came down in the 90s about sales tax, other types of taxes of non-Indians by tribes. So it's very difficult to get jurisdiction over non-Indians for tribes. And that's the world we live in. So tribes have the right to govern their own people. And they have the right to make rules and laws over their reservations, but no non-Indians are going to be put into what is sometimes referred to as treaty jail. Mille Lacs doesn't even have a jail. So there's really nothing's going to change for the people that live inside the reservation.
All right, and the final question for today's installment. In its press release, Mille Lacs County also said, for over 100 years, the United States, state of Minnesota, Mille Lacs County, and even the band all agreed that the reservation no longer exists. Is this true?
No, there was always an assertion that the band continued to hold on to its reservation. If you actually read Judge Susan Richard, I forgot the judge's name. Hang on.
It's Susan Richard Nelson, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. If you read Judge Nelson's opinion, it's like reading a story, the history of how Sheboshkin over years and years always was attempting to, wanted to make sure the boundaries were still intact. And so Abraham Lincoln said, your people can be here for 100 years or 1,000 years. And so there was this belief after they got the word from Abraham Lincoln, and also just over the decades, there was always a belief from the elders that the reservation never went away. And they talked about Sheboshkin going out and talking to this tall man in Washington who made a promise, and also promises were made in the treaties that the Mille Lacs Band, the 1863-64 treaty, says the Mille Lacs Band will never be compelled to be removed from these lands. And so they believed the treaties, and they were right.
All right. Tad, again, thank you very much for taking the time. And we will continue to field questions and come up with answers. Hope folks appreciate this effort.
Thank you.